The afternoon sun beat down on the small-town community center as Marcus Iron Fist Chen stepped out of his black BMW, his designer training gear catching the light. "This place looks like a dump," Marcus muttered to his girlfriend, Stephanie, who was busy filming him with her phone for social media. "Are you sure this is where that old loser hangs out?" Stephanie giggled, adjusting her perfectly styled hair. "That's what everyone says. Some washed-up guy who thinks he's still tough. This is going to get us so many views when you destroy him." Marcus had come here for one reason: to prove himself against the local legend that people whispered about. For months, he'd heard stories about an old man who supposedly knew real fighting, real combat. But Marcus didn't believe in legends. He believed in trophies, and he had 17 of them sitting in his penthouse apartment. "Time to show this town what a real fighter looks like," he said, cracking his knuckles as they walked toward the community center. Inside, the building smelled of old wood and years of honest sweat. It wasn't the polished, air-conditioned gym Marcus was used to. This was raw, authentic, and completely beneath his standards. A few elderly people sat playing chess in one corner, while some teenagers shot pool in another. "Excuse me," Marcus called out loudly, his voice echoing through the space. "I'm looking for some old guy who thinks he can fight. Goes by the name of William." The room went quiet. Every conversation stopped. Every head turned. An elderly woman with kind eyes looked up from her knitting. "You mean Bill? William Thompson?" "Yeah, that's the one," Marcus said with a smirk. "I heard he used to be some kind of soldier or something. I want to challenge him." The woman's expression shifted from confusion to concern. "Son, why would you want to do that?" "Bill's a good man. He doesn't bother anyone." "Because," Marcus said, stepping closer and raising his voice so everyone could hear, "I'm tired of people in this pathetic town acting like he's some kind of hero. I'm a professional fighter. I've won championships. I have a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and Muay Thai, and I'm here to prove that your precious old man is nothing but talk." Stephanie held up her phone, making sure to capture every word. This was going to be social media gold. "Bill doesn't fight anymore," said an older man from the chess table. "He's been through enough." Marcus laughed, a cold mocking sound. "Oh, I get it. He's scared. The big tough veteran is afraid of a real challenge." "You don't understand, son," the elderly woman said softly. "Bill lost his wife 6 months ago. He's been coming here just to find some peace." "I don't care about his sob story," Marcus snapped. "Where is he?" As if summoned by the tension in the room, the back door opened. A man in his early 60s walked in, carrying 2 grocery bags. He was average height, with gray hair and weathered hands that spoke of a lifetime of hard work. His clothes were simple, a faded flannel shirt and worn jeans. Everything about him seemed ordinary, unremarkable. This was William Thompson. "What's all the commotion about?" Bill asked quietly, setting down his groceries. Marcus stepped forward, sizing up the older man with disappointment. "You've got to be kidding me. This is the guy everyone's so afraid of? You look like my grandfather." Bill's eyes met Marcus's calmly. There was something in that gaze, not fear, not anger, just a deep, quiet strength that Marcus completely missed. "I think there's been some mistake," Bill said. "I'm just here to help set up for tonight's bingo game." "No mistake, old man," Marcus said, moving closer. "I'm Marcus Chen. Maybe you've heard of me? 3-time regional champion? I'm here to challenge you to a fight." The room held its breath. Bill looked around at the faces of his friends. People who had supported him through the darkest months of his life after losing Sarah, his wife of 38 years. "I don't fight anymore," Bill said simply. Marcus's smile grew wider. "Of course you don't, because you know you'd get destroyed by someone who actually knows what they're doing." He turned to address the room. "This is your hero, folks. Too scared to even try." "Marcus, please," the elderly woman said. "Just leave him alone." "No way," Marcus said, pulling out his phone to join Stephanie in recording. "This is too good. The whole internet needs to see this. Here we have the so-called tough guy of Millbrook, and he won't even accept a simple challenge." Bill remained calm, but those who knew him well could see the slight tension in his jaw. "Son, you don't know what you're asking for." "I'm asking for a fight, Grandpa." "Unless you're too old and weak to handle a real man," Stephanie laughed. "This is so pathetic. We came all this way for this?" Marcus circled Bill like a predator. "You know what I think? I think you were never really that tough. I think everyone in this town has been living a lie." respecting some broken-down old nobody who probably got lucky a few times back in the day. The chess players started to stand up, their faces showing anger at the disrespect being shown to their friend. But Bill held up a gentle hand, silently asking them to stay calm. "I think you should leave," Bill said quietly. "Make me," Marcus challenged, stepping nose to nose with the older man. "Come on, tough guy. Show me what you've got." For just a moment, just a split second, something flickered in Bill's eyes. It was there and gone so fast that Marcus missed it entirely. But Mrs. Henderson, the woman with the knitting, saw it. So did Frank, the man from the chess table. They had seen that look before many years ago when Bill first came to Millbrook. "I won't fight you," Bill said, stepping back. "Not here. Not anywhere." Marcus threw his head back and laughed. "This is unbelievable. You people have been worshipping a complete fraud." He looked around the room with contempt. "Your hero is nothing but a scared old man who probably made up every story you've ever heard about him." "That's enough," said Frank, standing up from his chess game. "You've made your point. Now leave. Or what?" Marcus turned his attention to Frank. "You going to fight me too? This place is full of has-beens and never-weres." He pulled out his wallet and threw a $20 bill at Bill's feet. "Here's some money for your bingo game, Grandpa. Buy yourself some tissues to cry into." The insult hung in the air like a physical blow. The entire room watched as Bill stared down at the money on the floor, his hands clenching and unclenching at his sides. "Pick it up," Marcus taunted. "Come on, pick up the money. That's probably more than you see in a week." Bill slowly bent down and picked up the $20 bill. For a moment, Marcus thought he had completely broken the old man's spirit. But when Bill stood up, he looked Marcus directly in the eyes. "You really want to fight me?" Bill asked, his voice still quiet but carrying something new underneath. Something that made the temperature in the room seem to drop several degrees. Marcus felt a tiny chill but pushed it down. "Finally. Yes, I want to fight you. Right here, right now." Bill looked around at his friends, these people who had become his family after Sarah passed away. Mrs. Henderson gave him the smallest of nods. Frank crossed his arms and nodded too. Even the teenagers had stopped their pool game to watch. "Not here," Bill said. "If we're going to do this, we do it right. The old gymnasium behind the center. Give me 5 minutes to change clothes." Marcus pumped his fist in the air. "Now we're talking. This is going to be so good." He turned to Stephanie. "Make sure you get every second of this. When I'm done with him, this video is going viral." As Bill walked toward the back room where he kept a small locker, Mrs. Henderson called after him softly. "Bill, are you sure about this?" He paused at the doorway and looked back at her. "Sarah always said I should use my gifts to protect good people. These folks have been nothing but kind to me." His voice was still gentle, but there was steel underneath now. Some lessons can only be taught one way. Marcus was already heading for the gymnasium, talking loudly to his camera about how he was about to expose the biggest fraud in small-town America. The crowd from the community center began to follow, word spreading quickly through the building that something big was about to happen. But Mrs. Henderson stayed behind for a moment, staring at the door Bill had gone through. She remembered the day he first came to Millbrook 7 years ago with his wife. She remembered the few times over the years when he had quietly helped when there was trouble in town. Never making a scene, never looking for credit, just making problems disappear. She also remembered the time she accidentally saw the scars on his arms and back when he was helping repair the community center's roof after a storm. The kind of scars that told stories most people couldn't even imagine. "God help that young man," she whispered to herself. "He has no idea what he just woke up." In the gymnasium, Marcus was doing warm-up stretches, showing off his flexibility for the cameras. "This is going to be the easiest money I've ever made," he told Stephanie. "When this video goes viral, sponsors are going to be throwing money at me." The gymnasium filled up quickly. Word had spread through the small town like wildfire. Some people came because they were curious. Others came because they were worried about Bill. But everyone came because they knew they were about to witness something that would be talked about for years. Frank had taken it upon himself to clear a space in the middle of the gymnasium, marking out a rough fighting area with chalk. "No rules," he announced to the growing crowd. "This was Marcus's idea, so it's his show." "Perfect," Marcus said, shadow boxing for the cameras. "No rules means I can really show everyone what I'm capable of." The back door of the gymnasium opened and Bill walked out. The change was subtle, but unmistakable. Gone was the slouched posture of grief and everyday ordinariness. Bill stood straighter now, his movements precise and controlled. He had changed into a plain white t-shirt and dark pants, but somehow he seemed to fill the space differently now. Marcus barely noticed. He was too busy playing to his audience, flexing and demonstrating kicks for the cameras. "Ladies and gentlemen," Marcus announced dramatically, "you are about to witness the end of a myth. This man has been lying to all of you for years, pretending to be some kind of warrior. But I'm about to show you the truth." Bill walked to the center of the makeshift ring and waited quietly. His breathing was steady, his hands relaxed at his sides. He looked like he was waiting for a bus, not preparing for a fight. "Any last words, old man?" Marcus asked, bouncing on his toes and throwing practice punches at the air. Bill was quiet for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice carried to every corner of the gymnasium. "I tried to warn you, son. But some people have to learn the hard way." Marcus laughed and raised his fists in a professional fighting stance. "Bring it on, Grandpa." The crowd pressed closer, phones out, everyone wanting to capture what was about to happen. The tension in the air was thick enough to cut with a knife. And then, in the space of a single heartbeat, everything changed. But what happened next would shock everyone in that gymnasium. And eventually, millions of people around the world. Marcus launched forward with a lightning-fast jab, the kind of punch that had won him 17 trophies and 3 regional championships. His form was perfect, his technique flawless. The punch should have connected squarely with Bill's jaw. Instead, Marcus found himself stumbling forward into empty air. Bill had moved exactly 3 inches to the right, just enough to let the punch whistle past his ear. The movement was so small, so effortless, that most people in the crowd missed it entirely. "Lucky dodge, old man," Marcus sneered, quickly recovering and throwing a combination. Left hook, right cross, knee strike. He was putting real power behind these strikes now, enough to seriously hurt an untrained person. But Bill wasn't there when the punches arrived. He seemed to flow like water, each movement minimal but perfectly timed. Marcus's fists found nothing but air while Bill looked like he was simply swaying to music no one else could hear. "Stop running away and fight me," Marcus shouted, frustration creeping into his voice. "I'm not running," Bill said calmly, his breathing still perfectly steady. "I'm right here." The crowd was getting restless. This wasn't the dramatic beatdown they had expected to see. Marcus was throwing punches, but somehow nothing was connecting. And Bill? Bill hadn't thrown a single strike yet. Stephanie lowered her phone slightly. "Why isn't he hitting him back?" she whispered to herself. Marcus, now breathing harder, decided to get serious. He dropped into a perfect Muay Thai stance and launched a devastating roundhouse. Kick toward Bill's ribs, the kind of strike that could crack bones. The kick never reached its target. Bill caught Marcus's leg midair with one hand, as casually as someone might catch a thrown ball. For just a moment, the two men stood frozen. Marcus balanced on one leg, his other leg trapped in Bill's gentle but unbreakable grip. "Impossible," Marcus gasped. Bill looked into the younger man's eyes. "Son, you're fighting angry. Angry fighters make mistakes." With the slightest twist of his wrist, Bill sent Marcus spinning away, completely off balance. The champion stumbled backward, barely managing to stay on his feet. The crowd murmured in surprise. That was not what anyone had expected to see. "You got lucky," Marcus panted, but for the first time since arriving in Millbrook, doubt crept into his voice. "That was just luck." Frank, watching from the sidelines, nudged Mrs. Henderson. "He's playing with him," he whispered. "Bill's not even trying yet." Mrs. Henderson nodded grimly. "That boy has no idea what he's dealing with." Marcus charged forward again, this time attempting a takedown, a wrestling move designed to bring the fight to the ground where his Brazilian jiu-jitsu training would give him the advantage. It was a smart strategy, executed with perfect technique. But as Marcus dove forward, Bill simply wasn't where he was supposed to be. The younger man hit the gymnasium floor hard, his shoulders scraping against the wooden boards. "Getting tired?" Bill asked, extending a hand to help Marcus up. The gesture of sportsmanship only enraged Marcus further. He slapped Bill's hand away and rolled to his feet. "I'm just getting started, old man." This time, Marcus unleashed everything he had. A flurry of punches and kicks, combinations he had practiced thousands of times, techniques that had never failed him in competition. He moved like a machine, precise and deadly. But Bill moved like something else entirely. Like smoke, like a shadow. like he knew exactly where every strike would be before Marcus even threw it. How is he doing that? Someone in the crowd called out. This is impossible, another voice said. Stephanie's phone captured every moment, but she found herself staring at the screen in disbelief, rather than enjoying the show she had expected. This wasn't going according to plan at all. Marcus was breathing hard now, sweat dripping down his face. He had thrown dozens of strikes, each one missing by mere inches. And Bill? Bill looked like he was taking a casual stroll in the park. What are you? Marcus demanded, his voice cracking slightly. I'm just a man who's lived a long life, Bill replied, and I've learned that violence should always be the last option. Stop talking and fight me. Marcus screamed, launching into his most devastating combination yet. This time, something different happened. As Marcus threw a particularly aggressive punch, Bill moved forward instead of away. His hand came up in what looked like a gentle motion, barely touching Marcus's wrist. But somehow that tiny touch redirected the entire force of the punch, sending Marcus spinning in a complete circle. The crowd gasped. Even the teenagers who had been playing pool stopped to stare. That's not possible, Marcus whispered, staring at his own hand as if it had betrayed him. Everything is possible, Bill said softly. You just need to understand the principles. For the first time since the fight began, Bill stepped forward. Not aggressively, not threateningly. He simply closed the distance between them by a single step. The effect on Marcus was immediate and dramatic. The young champion took 3 quick steps backward, his eyes wide with something he had never felt before in a fight. Genuine fear. You're not normal, Marcus said, his voice barely above a whisper. Define normal, Bill replied. Is it normal for a young man to come into a community center and insult elderly people? Is it normal to throw money at someone and tell them to cry into tissues? The crowd was dead silent now. Everyone could feel that something fundamental had changed in the atmosphere of the room. Marcus looked around desperately, as if searching for an escape route. But pride and embarrassment kept him rooted in place. He had started this fight in front of cameras and crowds. He couldn't back down now without destroying his reputation forever. I don't care what tricks you know, Marcus said, trying to inject confidence back into his voice. I'm still going to beat you. No, Bill said simply. You're not. And then finally Bill moved with intent. It happened so fast that most people in the crowd missed it entirely. One moment Marcus was standing there, fists raised in his fighting stance. The next moment he was on the ground gasping for air, with no memory of how he had gotten there. Bill was standing exactly where he had been before, his hands at his sides looking completely relaxed. What just happened? Stephanie demanded, frantically checking her phone to make sure it was still recording. Marcus rolled over slowly, his eyes unfocused. I don't... How did you get up? Bill said gently. This doesn't have to continue. But Marcus's ego wouldn't let him quit. He struggled to his feet, shaking his head to clear the fog. You caught me off guard, he muttered. That won't happen again. He raised his fists once more, but now his hands were shaking slightly. Son, Bill said, his voice carrying a weight that made everyone in the gymnasium lean forward to listen. I've been trying to be kind to you, but you're not listening. You came here to humiliate an old man in front of his friends. You threw money at me like I was a beggar. You mocked people who have shown me nothing but kindness during the hardest time of my life. Marcus felt something cold settle in his stomach. For the first time, he really looked at Bill. Not at his age, not at his simple clothes, but at his eyes. What he saw there made him take another involuntary step backward. I don't want to hurt you, Bill continued, but I won't let you disrespect these good people any longer. You can't hurt me, Marcus said, but his voice cracked on the words. I'm a professional fighter. I'm in my prime. I'm just what? Bill asked, taking another small step forward. Marcus opened his mouth to answer, but found no words coming out. Because suddenly, looking at this quiet man in his simple clothes, he realized he had no idea what Bill actually was. The crowd pressed closer, sensing that something incredible was about to happen. Mrs. Henderson clutched her knitting needles tighter. Frank found himself holding his breath. Last chance, Bill said quietly. Apologize to these people, take your camera, and leave. We can pretend this never happened. Marcus looked around the gymnasium, at the faces of the people he had insulted, at his girlfriend holding the camera that was supposed to make him internet famous. at the man standing in front of him who had just done impossible things with movements so subtle they seemed like magic. For a moment, it seemed like wisdom might win out over pride. But then Marcus caught sight of himself in Stephanie's phone screen and remembered who he was supposed to be. The champion. The winner. The man who never backed down. "I'm not apologizing for anything," he snarled. "And I'm definitely not running away from some washed-up old nobody." Bill nodded sadly. "I was afraid you'd say that." What happened next would be talked about in Millbrook for the next 50 years. Bill moved forward, not fast, not dramatically, but with a fluid grace that made it look like he was floating rather than walking. Marcus threw a desperate punch, putting every ounce of strength and training behind it. Bill's hand came up to meet the punch, not to block it, not to deflect it, but to touch it so gently that it looked like a caress. Marcus's fist stopped completely, as if it had hit an invisible wall. The champion stared at his own hand in complete bewilderment. He was putting all his strength into the punch, every muscle in his body straining, but his fist wouldn't move another inch forward. "Physics," Bill said conversationally as if they were discussing the weather. "Force, leverage, and timing. Most people think fighting is about strength, but strength without knowledge is just flailing around." With a tiny shift of his grip, Bill redirected Marcus's punch downward. The champion's own momentum sent him stumbling forward, completely off balance. But Bill wasn't done teaching. As Marcus stumbled, Bill's other hand touched him lightly on the shoulder. Just a tap, really. But somehow that gentle touch sent Marcus spinning like a top, his arms windmilling as he fought to stay upright. The crowd gasped collectively. What they were witnessing defied everything they thought they knew about fighting. Marcus managed to catch himself before falling, but he was breathing like he had just run a marathon. "What are you doing to me?" he demanded. "I'm showing you that there are things in this world you don't understand," Bill replied. "Techniques that take decades to master. Principles that can't be learned in a gym or a tournament." "That's impossible," Marcus panted. "I've studied every martial art. I know every technique." "Do you?" Bill asked. And then he did something that made everyone in the room question reality. He gestured for Marcus to attack him again. When the younger man hesitated, Bill simply stood there, arms at his sides, completely open and defenseless. "Go ahead," Bill said. "Give it everything you've got." Marcus couldn't resist. He had been challenged in front of cameras and crowds. His reputation, his entire identity as a fighter was on the line. He attacked with everything he had learned in 15 years of martial arts training. Every technique, every combination, every dirty trick he had ever picked up. And Bill made it all look like a dance. Every punch was gently redirected. Every kick was softly deflected. Every grappling attempt was smoothly countered. And through it all, Bill moved with such minimal effort that he might have been doing Tai Chi in a park. But the most incredible part wasn't what Bill was doing to Marcus's attacks. It was what he was doing to Marcus himself. With each gentle redirection, each soft counter, Marcus found himself more and more off balance. Not just physically, but mentally. Everything he thought he knew about fighting was being systematically dismantled by an old man who seemed to be barely trying. "Stop it," Marcus gasped, stumbling backward. "Just stop it. I'm not doing anything to you," Bill said truthfully. "You're doing it to yourself," and that's when Marcus finally understood the horrible truth. He wasn't losing because Bill was stronger or faster or more skilled in any conventional sense. He was losing because Bill was operating on a completely different level, a level Marcus didn't even know existed. The realization hit him like a physical blow. His legs gave out and he sat down hard on the gymnasium floor, staring up at Bill with a mixture of awe and terror. "Who are you?" Marcus whispered. The question hung in the air as the entire crowd waited for an answer. Bill looked around at the faces of his friends, these good people who had supported him through his grief, who had never asked about his past, who had simply accepted him as the quiet man who helped with bingo games and roof repairs. "I suppose," Bill said quietly, "it's time you all knew." Bill walked over to his small bag in the corner. Everyone watched in complete silence. Even Marcus, still sitting on the floor, couldn't look away. From the bag, Bill pulled out a small wooden box. It looked old and worn, like something that had traveled many miles. 30 years ago, Bill said, opening the box slowly. I wasn't William Thompson, the quiet man who helps with bingo night. Inside the box was a medal, but not just any medal. Even from across the room, people could see it was special. The medal caught the light, and there were words carved into it that most people couldn't read from where they stood. Mrs. Henderson gasped. She recognized that type of medal from old war movies. I was Sergeant William Thompson, Bill continued, his voice still soft but carrying a new weight. United States Army Special Forces, Green Beret. The words hit the gymnasium like a bomb. Marcus's face went completely white. No, he whispered. No way. I spent 15 years in places most people can't find on a map, Bill said, walking back toward the center of the room. Places where the only rule was survive. Where fighting wasn't about trophies or prizes. It was about coming home alive. He held up the medal for everyone to see. This is the Medal of Honor, the highest award for bravery our country can give. I got it for a mission in Afghanistan where I had to get 12 wounded soldiers to safety. Alone, through 30 miles of enemy territory. The crowd was dead silent. Even the teenagers had stopped whispering. Stephanie's phone was still recording, but her hands were shaking now. The things I learned, Bill continued, weren't taught in any gym. They were taught by masters in Thailand who could kill a man with their bare hands, by fighters in the Philippines who treated combat like art, by old warriors in places where losing a fight meant dying. Marcus tried to stand up, but his legs wouldn't work properly. You're lying, he said, but his voice was weak. You're just making this up. Bill looked at him with something that might have been pity. Son, I've killed men with my hands. Trained killers, professional soldiers, people who were younger, stronger, and better armed than me. He paused, letting that sink in. And you think your tournament trophies scare me? Frank stepped forward from the crowd. Bill, we never knew. You never said anything. Because I didn't want people to know, Bill replied. When Sarah and I came here 7 years ago, I was tired. Tired of violence. Tired of fighting. I wanted to be just a normal man in a normal town with the woman I loved. His voice got softer. Sarah knew everything. She was the only one. She helped me become the man I wanted to be instead of the weapon I used to be. Mrs. Henderson had tears in her eyes. That's why you were so broken when she passed. She was my anchor, Bill said. She kept me peaceful. Kept me human. He looked directly at Marcus, who was still sitting on the floor like a scared child. But you came here today and disrespected her memory. You disrespected the people who helped me through the worst time of my life. You threw money at me like I was garbage. Marcus finally managed to stand, but he was shaking. I didn't know. I'm sorry. I'm really sorry. Now you're sorry, Bill said. But 5 minutes ago you were ready to hurt an old man for internet views. He walked closer to Marcus, who automatically took a step back. Do you want to know what I really learned in 30 years of combat? Bill asked. Marcus nodded, too scared to speak. I learned that real strength isn't about hurting people who are weaker than you. It's about protecting people who can't protect themselves. Bill gestured to the crowd around them. These people took care of me when I couldn't take care of myself. They brought me food when I was too sad to eat. They sat with me when I couldn't sleep. They never asked for anything in return. His voice got harder. And you came here to make fun of them. To use them for your stupid videos. Marcus looked around the room at all the faces staring at him. Kind faces. Good people he had insulted and mocked. I was wrong, he whispered. I was so wrong. Yes, you were, Bill said. But being wrong isn't your biggest problem. As he walked toward the door, Bill thought about what he would tell Sarah if she were there. I think you would have been proud of me today, he said quietly. I protected our friends, but I did it with mercy. The next morning, Marcus's video went viral, but not in the way he had planned. The video showed a young champion getting completely dominated by an elderly man who never threw a single punch. It showed arrogance being humbled by wisdom. It showed the power of real strength. But most importantly, it showed the moment when a bully learned that you never know who you're dealing with. The comment section was full of people sharing their own stories. Stories about underestimating quiet people. Stories about learning humility the hard way. Stories about communities that take care of their own. And in a small town called Millbrook, life went on as usual. Bill still helped set up for bingo. He still fixed leaky roofs and helped carry groceries. But now, when strangers came to town acting tough, the locals would just smile and say, "You might want to meet our friend Bill first," because they had learned the most important lesson of all. Never judge people by what you see on the surface. You never know what battles they've fought, what skills they've learned, or what strength they carry inside. Real warriors don't need to prove anything to anyone. They just protect the people they love. And sometimes, that protection comes with a lesson that bullies never forget. What would you do if you met someone like Bill? Remember, kindness is strength, but don't mistake gentleness for weakness. Some people have earned the right to be peaceful. The end.